Today on the Relationship Renovation podcast, we're lucky enough to have Dr. Abby Medcalf, a best-selling author, a podcaster, a psychologist, and just a woman who has an incredible amount of wisdom around relationship wellness.
You cannot be in a love relationship ruled by fear. Fear never made any love relationship better ever in the history of relationships.
Yeah.
She talks to us about some of the real just obstacles that we have in connecting with our partner.
If I really want to shift, I have to shift. And I also always say, whoever's in the most pain needs to change first.
And really focuses on how one partner can significantly change a relationship. So stay tuned.
Hello, all, and welcome to the Relationship Renovation podcast. I'm Tarah Kerwin.
And my name is EJ Kerwin. And we want to dive right in today because we want to utilize every bit of the time that we have with our guest. We have a best-selling author, psychologist, podcaster, Dr. Abby Medcalf. Welcome to the Relationship Renovation podcast.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
We're always so happy and curious when we talk about other providers who really have found their passion working with couples. And so we're just really happy to have you here because we know that the work you have done has been profound.
Yeah, I mean,
Thank you.
You know, the best thing for us in just like jumping in and introducing our audience to you is, you know, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself, about your career, about how you ended up doing what you're doing? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll try to keep the Reader's Digest version, although young people listening won't know what that is. I'm a New Yorker originally. I live in the Bay Area of California now. And I really came to counseling through I'm a recovering heroin addict. And as many recovering people do, they get into counseling. And that's sort of how that all came about. And I eventually decided that I really wanted to impact more people. And I got into business and was working in organizations, helping leaders who had drug and alcohol problems. And while I was helping them in this very sort of coaching business capacity, I found that they would report to me often like, wow, it was all men pretty much. And they would say, wow, my wife and our relationship is really improving. And I'm getting along better with my kids. And I just feel happier. And I kept hearing these things. And after a while, I thought, what's happening? I'm not meeting these partners. I never meet the wives or husbands or whoever. Right. So I started being a researcher, a PhD. I started to really start to research. I thought, what am I doing? What am I saying? What are the things that are leading to these outcomes? And I started to really quantify that. And my background, I have a master's in counseling psychology. Mm-hmm. And then my PhD is actually in organizational psychology. So I have this interesting mix of both things, sort of the business and the psychology background. And I was, really counseling these guys, not knowing what the difference was between being a therapist and a coach. And that was resulting in us really getting to the real reasons that they were unhappy, period. So, we're not, as you guys both know, we're not compartments. You're not one way at work and one way at home. You're not miserable at work and super happy at home. It just doesn't work that way. Right. So, they were bringing their full selves everywhere. And that's the work we started to do. And my first book, which is a #1 Amazon bestseller called Be Happily Married, Even If Your Partner Won't Do a Thing, was really me quantifying what all that was. And then my latest book, Boundaries Made Easy, has really been about that next chapter of how important boundaries are and really are sort of the answer to all the problems you're having. So and I've been working with couples now for many, many years. And my Relationships Made Easy podcast really started just with couples. And now I've sort of branched that out. We're in our 6th season now into all relationships and how to be happy in all of our relationships.
Well, I mean, when I, was sort of doing our research and listened to your TED Talk, it really resonated because we get so many emails from listeners who say like, I have these problems in my relationship. I'm not happy, but my partner is just not interested in going to counseling. Yeah. And so to me, that was like just like the perfect place for us to launch from is like, tell us about that idea of how do people deal with when they want a better relationship, they want to be happier, but their partner doesn't seem to be along for the ride.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So it's based in science. And what I'm about to say is based in science. And that's, I think, the thing people have missed a lot. So what would happen for me is that someone would come in my office and say, I want to change my relationship, but my partner won't change. I would give them some great tool to start using, right? So basically, I'll have a client who has this great tool in their head, like that they're going to do with their partner. They go home, but so the 40 bits, the conscious part is saying, oh, I'm going to try this tool. It's going to be great. We're going to change the relationship, or they're acting nice to their partner. They're being kind or doing the thing. But that 11 million bits that their partner is picking up on is the wobble. I call it the wobble, is the place that it's not congruent. It doesn't match up. So their partner is, she's being nice to me now, but I'm going to wait and see what happens here.
Like there's something you don't completely trust.
Yep, exactly. And even though you don't think it consciously, you're not thinking that, or sometimes they do think it consciously actually, but often not. So they don't change. The partner doesn't change, doesn't do anything different. And then my client, sees they're trying and trying for a week, maybe two, and nothing changes. So they go, ugh, and they give up. And then the partner, of course, thinks, well, I'm glad I didn't change. I'm glad I didn't do anything different. I knew she'd go back, or he'd go back to the way they were.
Yeah.
Just self-perpetuating cycle, like sabotaging the relationship. Yeah.
Exactly. And then that client comes back to me and says, it didn't work.
Yeah.
And so you have to have alignment. You can't go in, or the other thing clients will ask me is, well, how long do I have to do this? And that comes back to your boundary. What do you mean? How long do you have to do this? This is your partner. Let's just start being kind. You don't have to wait until they're kind. You don't have to wait until they do something nice for you. This is about the team. And that's what I talk about a lot. So if you're only in your relationship, and a lot of people are, well, it's not fair. They're taking advantage of me. Yes. You cannot be in a love relationship ruled by fear. Fear never made any love relationship better ever in the history of relationships.
Yeah.
So if that's where you're coming from, again, those 11 million bits, that is what your partner's picking up on. And they feel the same.
So what I'm hearing is that there's a misalignment, and that your subconscious is in fear, is in not really believing that this is going to work. Right. And your partner hears that. They don't hear the actual words coming out of your mouth.
No more. Just like if you're talking, someone's at work, let's say, and they get a new boss, and the new boss is like, hey, I love you. So glad to be here. And in your head, you're like, I don't like this guy or this woman. I feel like they're full of crap. You know how you just sort of know it? That's the 11 million bits, and your partner has it too. And there's a second piece that's also going on, also part of our brain chemistry, which is talked about some, although I don't think it's talked about all the way, which is your reticular activating system, or your RAS for short. And your RAS is a filter between your conscious and your subconscious mind. And basically what it does is it takes things that you think from your conscious mind and it sends it to your subconscious to look for that thing. Because remember, we just said how powerful your subconscious is. And the easiest way I can talk about this is, when you've been pregnant, all you see are pregnant women everywhere. There's pregnant women everywhere. There's like a population explosion. And it's because you're pregnant and you're thinking that consciously a lot. And so your subconscious sends out the signal to look for pregnant people. Or if you've ever tried to buy a new car or thought of buying a new car and you want a gray Nissan Pathfinder, and all of a sudden, all you see on the road are gray Nissan Pathfinders. That is your RAS at work. Now, how that shows up in your relationship is if you think my partner is always nagging me, he's never going to change, she's whatever, then your RAS takes that, sends that to your subconscious as an order to look for that thing.
Yeah. Valid.
And you will see it everywhere. And the worst part, and this is the piece people don't always mention, which is really important, is that your brain is very efficient, and your RAS, because your brain is so efficient, because it thinks whatever you think consciously is what you want and what we should look for, it will filter out any times that your partner is loving and kind and says thank you.
Yeah, it's not looking for that.
It's not looking for it. And you both know, because you've done couples work, you've sat with a couple and she has said, he doesn't appreciate me. And he says, oh my gosh, last night I thanked you for dinner. I asked you if I could do something.
I did
this, right? You know, you've had this conversation.
Yes.
And she says, oh, well, no. Like, she sort of ignores it. Like it never happened. That's the RAS.
Yes.
All right. Well, go ahead, Tarah.
Well, I love this explanation of it, the more scientific piece, because we're always, talking about resentment and built-in resentment and negative core beliefs. But there is something to be said about, right, how our subconscious literally is ruling the roost, if you will.
It does rule the roost.
And that if we're not really careful and intentional about understanding what that piece is, we're going to play out these patterns over and over and over. And then that narrative of like, see, we're just not going to work. We just can't make it work. We've tried all of these things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you really haven't tried them the way they need to be tried. That's the issue.
And this is why you're here today. And everyone's going to read your book.
I hope so. Mostly because it'll help really change your life and get out of this pattern of thinking, because of course, then you keep proving yourself right. And we know about the confirmation bias on top. So we have psychological mechanisms in place and physical brain mechanisms in place. We are so screwed in that way because your confirmation bias goes, see, I knew he wouldn't change. I knew she was going to keep nagging me. It was just a matter of time. And you prove yourself right.
Yeah. I mean, the complicated thing too, like I'm just thinking of a moment we had even just like earlier today where it's happening for both people at the same time, yes. like I'm up in my head about and trying to say things in the way where I mean it, but I have this back of my mind talking to me. And I'm also interpreting, like, is what she's saying really genuine, or is she thinking this in the back of her mind? And then Tara's doing that at the same time with me. Yep. And it's like, we're not even speaking the same language, or we're not even really present. I guess that's part of it as well.
That's it. That's really it. And you don't realize you're not. So we think the way we're thinking is real or realistic or true. We think it's facts. And there's no facts involved. There's no evidence involved except what we're seeing. And God forbid you throw on top of that all the things we also know about our negativity bias, then you really are in trouble. And I know you guys have talked about like Gottman's, 5-to-1 ratio, right?
Sure.
Right. And we know just in general life, that ratio is something like 3-to-1 or 4-to-1, that for every 3 positive things that happen, it only takes 1 negative to sort of cancel it out. And, Gottman's ratio is 5-to-1 because we expect more from our partners. So all those wonderful things they did, when they just do the one thing, we're back to it. Like, oh, I knew it.
Strikeout.
All right. Well, everybody wants to know, right? That's why they're listening to shows. That's why they're reading your book, listening to your podcast as well. Like, okay, like what's the beginning to getting our conscious and our unconscious, into alignment?
Or that filter to do more positive instead of seeking fear.
Without a doubt. And the real answer, of course, to that is that you have to be mindful. Yeah. So it's not just self-awareness. Self-awareness is very nice, but it only gets you so far. I'm very self-aware that I'm controlling, but I'm not always mindful about my controlling behavior. Do you know what I'm saying? So,
right.
You can, and this is the argument I often get from my client. Well, I'm self-aware. I know my, and it's like, well, that's nice. But unless you're mindful in a moment and can stop what you're doing in a moment, it doesn't really serve you to be aware of it. Yeah. It doesn't take you very far. So I always have so much emphasis on practicing being mindful, and which doesn't have to be meditation. I know people get freaked out at the idea of meditating, which of course I would love everyone to do, but mindfulness can be as simple. I tell folks, set a timer on your phone for 3 times a day, some notification, some alarm that goes off any 3 times you want. And just when it goes off, notice where your head was, notice what you were thinking about. And we know that you're like Killingsworth, has a whole TED talk on this, that our minds wander almost 50% of the time. And so when you're talking to your partner, think of that. Half the time, your mind is not on what the two of you are talking about. And we know that goes to a high of about like 70 to 80% when we're doing rote things like making dinner, folding the laundry, or, that we're really mind wandering. We're really not in our moment, right? And it goes down to a low of about 10% when we're having sex. That seems to be when we're the most present with one another. Although I always wonder what my hubby's thinking with that 10%, but where'd he go? Come back. But although that can really be obviously damaged too, our sex lives, when we start thinking about, how do I look? Does my butt look big? Is he attracted to me? I've had babies, I've whatever, our minds can wander more there too. But regardless, think about that. So, and that's where most arguments happen. That's where most, I would say, not just even most, I want to say all, but I'm going to say most. Yeah. Arguments happen when I have my mind one place and my partner comes into that, right? Mm-hmm. He's in his mind space and I'm somewhere else. And he asks me maybe like, oh, hey, did you call the plumber? Like I promised to last week. But I've been spinning about all the 90 things I have to do today. And I haven't called the plumber yet. And so he comes in sort of innocently saying, oh, hey, did you call the plumber yet? Really nice. And I snap at him maybe, right? Because my mind is on all the things I have to do. And now you've just added something else that not only do I have to do, but that I haven't done for 2 weeks, that now I'm in trouble, maybe in trouble for, or I feel like I'm in trouble. And then an argument starts. Well, I have a lot I have to do and I have been really busy. And it's like, that's not the response. Or my favorite is we list all the things we did do. Yeah. Well, for sure. I made dinner for the kids and I've been doing the laundry and I had to work all day. And it's like, I just asked if you called the plumber. Like I didn't need a list of what you've done. And then I think in my head, he doesn't appreciate me. You see, like it just keeps like a perpetual thing.
So I'm hoping that listeners today can hear something that Dr. Abby is saying, and that is that our brains definitely get in the way of having healthy relationships. And if we can have some compassion, grace, and curiosity, that if we can do something different, be more intentional, be more mindful, we might be able to see our partner and have behaviors and actions that are quite different from what is happening now.
That's really the key, is to act as if.
I mean, so back to that original sort of question is like, okay, so you really clarified that this is hard. That our unconscious and our conscious are in opposition to one another. That's hard enough. But then you add into it that only one person is listening today. And only one person is saying, I'm going to get this in alignment. What's like the one tip that you're like, or the launching point, other than reading your book, of course?
No, for sure. It is the game. I would say the biggest game changer that clients tell me, this is the one, is actively setting intention throughout the day. So that means that you think in the morning, you wake up, you're like, what's my intention for how I'm going to not just treat your partner, but everyone, with joy, with love, with compassion, with grace. And because remember, now I'm going to use that RAS to my advantage. I am consciously telling my RAS what to look for. And what's beautiful is that will help you be mindful. So I would also say to set the reminder on your phone for 3 times a day for 1 week. You'll see a difference right away, because the brain works on frequency and recency. The more frequently you do something and the more recently you've done it, the brain thinks it's important. So when you do that, what'll happen after a couple of days, your brain will remind you to be compassionate, loving, or kind. It's amazing. It's amazing. Or you'll be in something going, ooh, I'm not doing this a great way. And this again is really about your boundaries as a human, how you're treating another person. And you have to get rid of fair. You have to get rid of, what's right. I always say to my clients, do you want to be correct or effective? Because you can be correct all day long that your partner should X, Y, Z. Right. But is that effective? Is that bringing you the relationship of your dreams? Is that bringing you closer? No, because you're a team and you have a shared battery and you have to see it that way. So as you get brought up, all boats rise kind of thing is what happens, but you have to have 100% commitment to this. You can't be in it waiting because that's the wobble. That's the fear factor. Stop waiting. Isn't this who you want to be anyway? Isn't this who I want to be in the world? Yeah. I want to be compassionate. I want to be thoughtful. I want to be kind. Why would it change waiting on someone? And the easiest way to think of this, I think, is if you think of your children. We have a very easy time often being very kind, compassionate, and patient with our children when they're in trouble, when they're hurting, when they're having a hard time, right? We don't like, oh, what's wrong with you? Like, get over it. We generally don't say that to our little kids. But I hear people and they'll say, well, he's a grown ass man. He needs to, it's like, exactly. Like, why are we separating ourselves from this beautiful person you married or you're in a committed relationship with this person? We know from the research, this is the most important thing in your world for your happiness. Yeah. This is it. Yeah. This is it. You're at this is it. So if I really want to shift, I have to shift. And I also always say, whoever's in the most pain needs to change first. And that's you. That's the person listening. Yeah, doesn't feel fair. It's not fair, Abby. Well, again, do you want to be correct or effective? So if you get rid of fair, and every time you hear yourself using that language or taking advantage of what? That I'm just kind in the world? What are you talking about? And again, when you have boundaries, healthy boundaries, you don't have to worry about getting taken advantage of. Boundaries are love. It's all love.
I was just going to ask you more about, because I know that your book coming out is about boundaries. Could you just say a little bit more to that?
Yeah. I mean, it's out. It's been out a few months and it's called Boundaries Made Easy, your roadmap to connection, joy, and ease, because that's what boundaries give us. Boundaries is when you take full responsibility for your thoughts, feelings, and actions, and no responsibility for someone else's thoughts, feelings, and actions. The biggest mistake I see couples making is, number one, they throw around the word all the time. Don't do that. It's not a boundary that your partner has to put away the dishes at night. That's not a boundary. That's just like a house rule. That's very different. Your boundaries are the things you need to feel safe, secure, and cherished in your relationship. That's something else. Those are the real issues. And when you're always focused on the dishes or the wiping the counter completely, that one comes up a lot. I don't know why. Whatever. When you're focused on that stuff, or how busy your sex life is or isn't, when you're focused on those things, you're missing the bigger piece, which is what's the cancer that's creating those issues. So number one, saying how you feel to your partner is also not a boundary. I don't like when you say that. I wish you would do it this way. Those are not boundaries. Those are you just sort of stating what you'd like or feel. A boundary always has some kind of teeth. It has something on the other side, again, that you will do if a boundary isn't held. So boundaries are more things, I call them our core values. Like, I want to feel respected. I want to feel cherished. Here's what I need in my life. And the problem that happens a lot is that people assign meaning. So if my husband doesn't pick up his socks and I've asked him to, then I think it means he thinks I'm his maid, so he doesn't respect or appreciate me. That is not true. I mostly have had men in my practice all these years because I worked with executives for so long. And I will tell you, no man ever in the history of men, except for like narcissists, which are, don't throw around that word because everyone does. Very few people are actually narcissists, as we all know. Except for them, I've never met a husband or partner or whatever who wanted to piss off his person.
Yeah.
That is like the last thing EJ could, I'm sure, attest to this.
Yes, I do not try to do
thing
that.
on their mind.
It's
Right?
so true. Abby, it's
It's so
true.
true. And so get rid of that in your head, the definition you give something, the meaning you've given something. What it means when your partner hasn't picked up his socks isn't that he doesn't love you or respect you or appreciate you. It means that he is overwhelmed too, that he also is full.
Can I share a really quick example of maybe something that happened with EJ and I this morning? And I feel like because we're on the other side of it, right? Because we try to do all of this, we do all this work because we have to, because we're compelled, because that's why we do what we do. And so, this morning I'm coming into work and, I got ready. I did a little meditation. I was just listening to Tara Brach, but that's just like my meditation. And so get to the office and I know EJ's here with Kelby and he's like trying to get all this equipment done and technology done. And so I get to the office and he's like, I can see he's in his head and he's like, doesn't recognize like, hey, honey, you look so pretty today. And I'm just, right, abandonment issues. I like to be seen at times. It just feels good, especially when you're getting ready. When you've got 4 kids, you don't get to get ready every day.
Yep.
So like a couple minutes went by and I could feel that like for me, it's like this heaviness in my stomach, like, oh shoot, this is happening. I could go into the narrative of like, here we go again. Like he doesn't appreciate me. But I knew that wasn't the case. So I said, EJ, can we step outside for a second? Can I just share something with you? I've got to let you know, like, I just feel a little sad. And I know that you're super busy, but I would love it if you and I could just like have a couple minutes, especially before we're going into our podcast, to just see each other and be really present. And I know that you have all this other stuff going on, but it's just so important for me to kind of go into, our day with just like a couple minutes of being really present and looking into each other's eyes. That's a healthy boundary, yes?
That is it's even beyond that. It's a way of you noticing and being mindful, because you're self-aware that the abandonment is an issue, but you're also mindful in a moment of how you feel.
Right.
And you also, I always want to remind people, someone will say to me, well, I was in a good mood and then my husband came home in a bad mood and that just ruined everything. And it's so interesting. I'm like, why is it assumed that you'll go to the bad mood? Why isn't it assumed that he'll come to your good mood? Why aren't you the dominant vibration in the room? Why is this other person? And especially with women, I think this is age old stuff with us and people pleasing and all the things. I would also love it. You can also come in and see that EJ is somewhere else and go, hey, babe, how hot am I?
Check me out,
and
honey.
Be playful. Or you could go over and just grab him and give him such a huge, like a good kiss,
it's
like
so
the real
true.
kind. Yeah. I mean, you could bring him, it's so quick and easy. And you don't even have to say all the other stuff about the hurt and here I am.
And
you
know
can,
what?
that's lovely.
No, but that's so true because his reaction was like, oh, well, if you would have shown up just like 5 minutes ago, it would like trying to defend him and himself. And I was like, no. Like,
well, because like you said, I'm never trying to hurt her. It's like, my intention isn't to not pay attention, and so and when you hear that, especially when you hear your partner and they're vocalizing that hurt, you're like, oh, I fucked up again. God damn.
That's
what the shit,
thing.
Man?
And I thank you. And I do want to say this often to women because we do want to share our feelings so much. And men immediately, our men, especially our guy, right? Our partner immediately there, because again, this is old stuff. I'm supposed to make her happy. And if she's not happy, or I'm supposed to protect her. And if she's not happy, it's my fault.
Yeah.
So I find that there is kind of a knee jerk with men. I say with love, EJ, that they do get a little defensive when we tell them our feelings. And then women are like, oh, I can't even share my feelings. And I would much rather, again, that you picked a different time and then talked about yourself. Like, when you're really connected. The other thing I say a lot is you have to connect to correct. You have to be connected first, and then you can talk about the other things. So how great maybe that you had jumped in his lap even when he was in the middle of doing something and really like, I don't know, put his hand on your boob or I don't,
No, I love this.
Wow, Abby.
It's like a whole, no, it's a whole different, it's a whole different spin where it's actually me feeling empowered to say, hey, hon. And instead of putting the responsibility on the other person, which then will always be disappointed, right? Our ego will never be happy. So
it sets us up as a victim, and we don't ever want to be that.
Exactly.
And on the opposite side, that like I really resonate with the unconscious, because the unconscious is my defensiveness. But now I'm mindful and I meditate and all that stuff. So I feel my defensiveness coming up. But even with the awareness of it, it's like a bull. It's so hard to control. And even if I control saying something, Tarah literally sees like micro expressions in my face that say I'm being defensive. And then her, very open-hearted admission this morning, automatically I can see her then inside her of like, oh, he's being defensive. And then it's like I doubly screwed up. Not only did I not notice that she looked good this morning, but then I've been defensive about the fact that she feels sad that I didn't. And so it's like, man, how deep is this freaking hole going to get?
Yep. And so when we can sort of in the moment, if we can, not like think to ourselves instead, well, I'm feeling crappy that my husband isn't noticing me. How do I want to feel? And then us be in charge of getting to that feeling without our partner having to do it.
Yes.
And we can engage our partner in that. How lovely. I back up to Gary a lot. Like I'll back up and go, look at that ass, and I'll sort of just joke about it, and he'll like smack my ass or, smack my butt. It's like a little joke we have about it. And when you bring some lightness to it, and then later I can say to him, I'd like us to work on our mindfulness when we first see each other. Not, I need you to compliment me when I walk in a room, but instead, I'd like us to work on our mindfulness when we first see each other. We have a rule, for example, and this is an easy one for every couple out there to do. We always greet at the door. Every time someone comes home, it doesn't matter if they were gone 10 minutes. It doesn't matter if they were gone 10 hours. It doesn't matter. We greet at the door. You stop what you're doing. Stop talking to the kids. Stop whatever. If you're home, obviously, whatever you're doing, the email can wait. Everything can wait. Obviously, if you work from home and you're in a meeting, okay. But even then, I would say, see if you can just, say to the meeting, I have to step out for a second. I need a bio break or whatever.
Yeah.
And then go to the door. And we sort of joke about being different kinds of dogs at the door, like a golden retriever, and my Gary, by the way, is 6'4" and like 220. He's a big guy. So he's just like, there's all this huge energy coming at me, and it's beautiful. And to really look and say to the person, my other favorite is not to say, I love you, and instead to say what you really mean. So I missed you so much today. I'm so glad to see you. Welcome home. So happy you're here. Oh my God, you look so sexy. Or I don't care. Whatever you really mean in a moment, like, oh my gosh, I just want a hug. I can't wait to be in your arms. When we say what we really mean, what I love, because I love you can become emotional wallpaper. It's lovely to say, don't get me wrong. I say it a lot, but even with my kids, other people, it's really cool. Like, I appreciate you. I don't know if I've told you enough how just I find you so beautiful. Like in that moment of I love you, what else is there? And so at the door to do the greeting is incredible. It changes the energy of, oh, hi, honey, welcome home. Yeah, what'd you do today? Nothing. I was fine. That conversation doesn't happen. And instead there's true connection.
And to me, that's like, you're so important. I'm going to drop everything and I'm going to see you because you're my person. And that just puts the heart at ease. And it's a tiny thing, right? EJ leaves these little notes in the coffee machine every morning because he gets up and leaves earlier before me. And that's all I need. And there's mornings where I won't have it and I'll be like, oh, but I knew he was getting out. But it's the little things that like, you are my person. And I love this greeting at the door piece because it happens every day. You have to be intentional. So at least once or twice a day, you are saying, you're my priority. And it's something so simple.
Yep. Because otherwise, too, especially women, we come home and we're like, what are the kids doing? Did the homework happen?
Oh,
What's
yeah.
going on? What's for dinner? Did someone start? Did somebody walk the dog, clean up the dog poop in the back? We start doing tasks and people get, and then what do we hear our husbands say? We hear them say, oh my God, I just got home. Can you give me 2 minutes?
Yeah.
Or the opposite, or my kids used to, right? My kids would always push back. They were home doing their thing and I come in like a tornado. So if you set intention before you walk in the house, my intention when I walk in is to be patient. My intention is to be fun. My intention is to be connecting. And then if you also do the door greeting, I mean, you're golden. Like
Yeah.
you've just shifted your energy for the evening. Instead of being on autopilot, you have now created something else.
Well, and I think like for me, what I heard there also that I can personally use, and I certainly think a lot of people out there can use, is the moment before I walk in the house.
Yeah.
Is creating some sort of routine, because we talk a lot about, especially with professionals, like about like creating some routine between your work life and your home life, but some routine of like, I'm going to give Tarah my attention like right away, right when I get there, because to me, I have a higher likelihood of doing that if I create something that's going to remind me every time I touch the doorknob or whatever, and then also for me, this is a big one, not being attached to outcome. That if I go up and try to give her a big hug and she, basically gives me her shoulder and continues doing whatever she's doing, that, okay, I want to be loving and caring and try to connect. And if she's not there, then okay, maybe next time, like it's going to be okay.
Don't take it so personally. I love that. And again, when you're greeting at the door, you've taken away a lot of that because again, Tara's she's already done some homework with the kids or she's had the dog.
Yeah. I don't know what's going on with her.
Dinner. Exactly. So her mind is wandering somewhere else and you come in and look to hug. And also a lot of women are getting, depending on the woman and how old their kids are getting kind of pawed at all day and people wanting things all day.
Oh, so true.
And often a man's touch can feel like they want sex, or they're expecting it later or whatever. And that becomes its own thing. So I love the non-sexual touching. I think we need more of that. And we also need the non-sexual, looking at our partner, gazing at them at dinner. That is great foreplay, by the way. Just having times that we are cuddling, doing things that aren't leading to sex in that moment. But what happens for women is if there aren't a lot of those other things where there's a lot of non-sexual, we're not going to have sex now, but we're having kind of a sexy time or a sweet time or a physically intimate time. When there's more of that, we're more open to all the attention and that it's on our terms, So again, if you can greet at the door and have a good hug, a kiss that lasts longer than 6 seconds, right? Gottman's research, is a real kiss with some potential, Sometimes Gary and I just make out at the door. It's very nice, much to everybody else's dismay. But having those times, because when you've been together a while, right? It's, you got to kind of figure out the ways to keep things really feeling just really connected. So we don't mistake sex for intimacy, because sex can be intimate, obviously, but it can't be instead of, or the only way we have it. And to really have that true intimacy in other places, it's what builds a better sex life, but it also builds just, again, all that connection. So when we do go to correct, when we do go to say, hey, this was hard for me, or I didn't like this, we have a different space we're coming from.
So I think, one of the strongest points that we hit today, that the listeners at home can take with them is be the person you want to be in your relationship and be consistent. Do it over and over and over. Don't be attached to outcome.
Right.
Don't take everything personal. and stick with it. And eventually, hopefully you're creating some trends in your relationship. And I assume that's where your newest book comes in around boundaries. If that doesn't happen for an extended amount of time, if that doesn't happen for 3 months, 6 months, a year, or whatever, then there is going to be a point, because at that point you have, and I'm quoting you, you've taken responsibility for your own thoughts, feelings, and actions for a long time. And now you're sort of going like, okay, there's a problem here.
Right. There's more clarity.
Right. Maybe we have different goals. Maybe it's very hard to be in a long-term relationship and have the same goals. Like, I don't have any friends from when I was 5, or 10 or even 15 or 20, because I was a drug addict then. I don't have anything like anybody I knew then that I was friendly with. These are not my people. Right. So I stayed out of those, I don't have those. I have one very good friend that I've had a long time since, college. That's it. Because it's very rare actually to meet someone who grows at the same rate, who wants the same things over a 20-year span. That's not so common. So how do you build that? I'm not saying you can't have it, but we have to leave room for people's growth in a relationship and finding that they want different things. But everybody wants connection and to feel cherished. Everybody.
Yeah. And one, I think for me, the biggest, well, first of all, thank you, Abby, because you're just so wise and it's so practical too. And it's also scientific. There's all these things together but what I'm really taking with this is that we don't have to feel so heavy and stressed and victim-y. Like, we can have our own sense of agency, make it light, make it playful, be the person that we want to be, who we want to be in the world, and then kind of go from there. But we don't do that right now. Right. And so if we can get better at doing that, then we might have more clarity. And it might feel a lot more playful and happier, because our person really does want to make it work.
Yeah.
We just don't see it. Exactly.
Yeah. One of the blessings we have in doing this podcast is speaking with people like yourself, and not just amplifying it out to all of our listeners, but also, like, I'm walking out of this feeling like, this is like a great freaking reminder for me. This can really help me sort of reconnect with a lot of things I know and a lot of ways I want to be, but struggle to for some very scientific reasons. I want to encourage, before we interviewed you, we listened to your podcast, Relationships Made Easy. I just want to encourage our audience to check it out, because there's a ton more of what you have to offer that people could get a lot out of. So thank you for doing that. Yeah.
And I'm going to order 2 books today from Amazon. And they're Dr. Abby Metcalf books. It's great.
Wonderful.
I think like one of our assignments for our couples at home should be like, you guys have to make out at the door and give yourself each different breeds. Like, I'm hearing Gary might be a Great Dane.
Yeah. I always call him a Great Dane. That's so funny.
Oh, that is
he
so
doesn't.
funny.
He wants to be a lap dog, but he's not. Yeah, but he doesn't realize it.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much, Abby. Thank you for your work. Thank you for your research. Thank you for being here with us and for your messages. I'm sure we could have like 10 more podcasts with you, and they would all be very enriching. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Hopefully we'll do something in the future, but thank you for having me. It's so wonderful to be here.
Right on. All right. Well, thank you so much again, everybody. Please check out Dr. Abby Metcalf. Check out her 2 books, one of them an Amazon #1 bestseller. Check out her podcast, Relationship Made Easy. And she also has a great TEDx talk that you can find. It's on her website as well. So check her out. She's doing some amazing things and talking about some great stuff.
Everyone, so thank you, Dr. Abby Metcalf. Thank you, listeners. And as always, take care of yourself, take care of each other. Bye-bye.